Welcome back to Zombie SquadCAST. In this episode, I got Ali Cheff. I get all that right? Ali Cheff?
Yeah.
Ali Cheff. All right.
Yeah.
And Ali is a filmmaker and producer and production manager. I've worked with you on a number of things. I think some stuff with Trey, like the that DC fashion show.
Oh yeah,
like
forever ago.
forever
Yeah.
ago, and some ID shows, I think, too, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I did some casting for them, and then I also work as a voice actor and an actor and a clown.
Awesome.
And I'm shooting a documentary right now. So.
All right. Well, yeah. Let's start with that. Introduce yourself. Tell us what you do, and especially that documentary and what's been going on.
Sure. I guess I would describe myself as a story creator. Okay. So not only do I travel and adventure, I then try to either assist in somebody else's story, putting it together, doing production like you listed. I'm shooting a documentary I've been shooting for the last 2 years. I'm a one-man band on it, which is like challenging, but also really great because my subjects are able to get really close, and I'm not very invasive. So after we established like a week of trust, now I'm like in. So like everyone feels comfortable talking to me. We have agreements as far as like content that's irrelevant to the documentary, like gossip has nothing moving it forward. The documentary is on the Equal Rights Amendment, and so I've been following a small group in the Shenandoah Valley who were very successful in having a very bipartisan group and ground game. And so I've been with them through the ratification in the state of Virginia, and then kind of now piecing together last interviews for a shorter version of the documentary, because it's such a long game. So once the short version gets kind of sewed up, I'll make the decision on whether the future content that I gather is going to go for a long documentary, or if I'll just donate it to a couple other documentaries that I know are covering the ERA as well. And then I do a lot of voiceover work, audio, animation, industrials, then acting. And that's just kind of like the range of stage to film. And then I also work as a clown, and I've worked as a humanitarian clown for about 13 years. So I work with Patch Adams, and the
real one.
Yeah, the tall guy.
Okay.
Tall. He's very tall.
Very cool.
He's very he's delightful.
What wasn't that like a big issue with the movie, that Robin Williams was like short, and like there was like a lot of people had like some criticisms about some inaccuracies, I guess, about it or something.
Sure. I think that kind of happens a lot. I mean, they turned it into a love story. The character that dies, that was a friend. It was a dear friend of his, a fella who that happened to. But they kind of, I think what happens sometimes with storylines is they're not sure if it's going to grab people enough, and they want to throw that extra little thing in. So yeah, they created a love story in it. Yeah, the height difference. Actually, it's funny you say that, because I'm friends, I'm close with his 2 sons as well. And one of them just sent me a picture to show how like gangly they were, like 14, standing next to Robin. Right. And it's just like the height difference is insane. Yeah. It is really, because Patch, I think, is like, I think he's like 6'7" or 6'8", something like that.
Robin Williams is nowhere near 6'7".
No, real short. Yeah, yeah. So the Humanitarian Clown is clowning is kind of done all over the world, and it's similar to Clowns Without Borders. It's open to different levels of clowns, though. Clowns Without Borders strictly deal with professional clowns. It's a lot of going into prisons and hospitals and orphanages and low, like poor areas, war-stricken areas, and kind of the idea is the same kind of concept as Patch with love and positivity as healing, is creating like parades and joy in areas, giving a respite, if you will, for a little period of time. So there's no reason why art and performance shouldn't be accessible to everybody.
Yeah.
So a bit of that. So all over the place, I
Yeah.
basically am
I
a
dig it.
lot of creating.
Yeah. So you said what, humanitarian clowning?
Hmm. Yeah.
Humanitarian clowning. Okay.
Yeah, I do some stage clowning too, but like humanitarian clowning I've done the longest, and it does have like performance like routines and stuff, or
Hmm.
maybe like a stage performance, but a lot of it is just uh being a clown, being present, and it all about being the game that the audience plays with you.
Hmm.
So if you're in a hospital, you might go into one room and it's a bunch of kids, and they have you do slapstick where you're doing pratfalls over and over again, and
Mm.
it's giving them back the control that they don't have,
Right.
because they don't know when they're getting out of the hospital, if they're getting out of the hospital. They can't control what kind of care they're getting, but they can control that clown that comes in there.
Yeah.
And then there's other people that just want to cry. I remember talking to this moto taxi guy, and he had so many broken bones, and he just wanted to talk about life. And then some people can't move, and you just sing them a song. So, and prisons are fascinating spaces, especially in the South America where I've done most of my clowning, because there's so much interaction with all the inmates, and it's such an open space, and there's almost this nothing to lose when the clowns come. They're like there's like no inhibition, except with like the teens, but like the adults are just kind of like all in for all the games, all in for all the silliness. And yeah, it's really fun to interact with other people on a level where nothing matters except for that person in front of you. You're
Hmm.
not thinking about how sick they are. You're not thinking about what crimes they committed. You're not thinking about their mental situation. You're not thinking about any of those things except for like being with them really in that moment and moving within that moment. So yeah, I love doing
Wow.
it.
Yeah. I think that's also, it's something you have to be careful about. You have to, it's not, you know, when I hear of, positions like humanitarian clowning or volunteer work
Hmm.
or performing for kids, it's not the same. It's not the same as playing a cop on TV, where
Oh no, yeah.
I'm just, I have a simple script, spit it out. My three, my three rules: connect to the character, memorize your lines, be and be in that moment. But that's a
Hmm.
fictional moment. But where when you it's a much more delicate situation you're in
Hmm.
when you are possibly doing something, the last thing this person's going to see, or they're in
Hmm.
jail. They're in jail, so they don't see anything at
Yeah.
all. They're surrounded by such misery that this one happy moment is way more important than and not to take anything away from the other stuff we've done, but this
Sure.
one moment, this 10-minute, 15-minute, 20-minute moment is way more important than just a TV show or a movie on TV, and
Oh, certainly,
and so
certainly.
you're dealing with like a much more delicate, much more fragile, much more, you know, epic kind of isolated moment.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And the sensitivity, we do this
Sensitivity.
thing where it's called holding violette. It, um, they're the clowns that I work with are kind of like from everywhere. So we intentionally make a space after going somewhere and doing performances, and kind of like it's optional, a regrouping and a checking in, because a lot of times what happens is you're present, and yeah, also clowns have to go in with intense listening, because you have to, like you're saying, the sensitivity and the fragility of a moment, and you don't know what someone's gone through, like if you're dealing with kids that have been sex trafficked, touching them or like maybe trying to manhandle play is not necessarily a safe
Yeah,
play with them. So you have to listen to what is that game again that they want to play.
absolutely.
And then as clowns, we're all people that have our own experiences too. And so there's like a recorder that's recording everything that's happening, and you might be very in the moment, so you don't realize that that child in that woman's hand is going to die, and all the circumstances in that environment that are present, you're not paying attention to as the clown. But as soon as you step out and you guys leave, it's like all of that input that just was coming in, even though you weren't registering it, comes. And so a lot of times at the end of that, clowns will get together and just kind of process if they want, or just sit and listen, because sometimes you don't even know how something, you might not recall a trauma of your own life that's triggered by one of those things.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm glad you brought up the sensitivity and all of that, because it is something that being aware to make sure that because it's a live, real performance present and like interaction, that you have to make sure you're at a place where you can honor that and protect that space and protect the individuals you interact with, so that if you don't process that and you don't protect yourself and you don't have awareness of yourself enough going into it, then you can cause a lot of harm. Mm-hmm. So you really do have to have that sensitivity and awareness of yourself as well, to go, ooh, I should step back and let someone else go into this, because it's not, that's going to trigger something for me that in the end is going to affect the people around me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, going back to like, okay, so film and TV,
mm-hmm.
if you biff it, take 2, take 3, take 4.
Sure. Yeah.
And I did high school theater, and I hated it. And the amount of stress and
sure.
and the attention on you. And if you biff it there, they're like with comedians and with theater actors and Broadway plays and stuff, and singers and dancers. There's a way to, if the famous line, if you get tangled up, then you can tango on.
Yeah, I haven't heard that one. That's good.
Well, it's from Son of a Woman. Al Pacino said it, Son of a Woman. Okay. So definitely check that out. But yeah, so if you get tangled up, tango on, and these dancers have like prepared things to do if they get tripped up. Singers have something prepared. Theater actors, if they forget a line, then they might have something like something extra in the bag. Comedians have things memorized for hecklers, for forgetting a joke, for something. They always have a workaround. But for something like this, it's there is no biff in it. You could either make their day great. They could be like, it was kind of disappointing. Or you could make their situation worse. And there is no biffing. And even if their day, even if they just go back and like, well, I'm not more pissed off, but it was just, like that's still a loss. And really, like, the whole point is to like make this one bubble within the universe of span of time, this one moment, like you said, a space, but it's like this bubble in the whole spectrum of time and space in the universe has to be perfect with no biffs, if I'm making sense. You know what I mean? No botches.
Well, yeah, you're always a very present moving target. I think that the only way you can fail is if you think about how good you're doing.
Okay. Yeah.
Like you can't, like you don't go in going, I'm going to be so funny. Those kids are going to laugh so hard, and then they don't laugh, and you go, oh. As soon as you become self-conscious, that's when you fail. It really is like, it's all about the audience. Like there's no matter what audience, it's their game. They always have control over what you do. And even when you watch a stage clown, you watch Chaplin, or you watch even Marcel Marceau, but you watch them, traditional clown work is, they'll go and then they check in with you, and then they'll look back at it, and then they check in with you, and they wait to see if that's the joke you want to play. Do you want to play that joke? Okay, I'll go play that joke. And it's the same with like, if a kid doesn't laugh at you, or like I did this in this one prison, it was all the like teens, and they just were like too cool for school. They hate it. They're just like, oh, I hate the clowns, I'm gonna avoid them. And then so it was switching up the game. It's like, what works? Okay, I'm gonna go be a teenager with them. And then once you go play a teenager, I went and played a teenager, it just so happened. And then I hung around this one, and then they started giggling the fact that I was following one, and then it was their game. So I kept playing the game that they wanted to play versus my game, which was like, look at me juggle, or look, you know what I mean? So I think biffing or failure, if you linger on that, that's when you fail. But like you were saying about the tango, it is moving forward. But unlike stage or film or any of those, you're not trying to return back to something. Like with
just
stage,
keep it going. It just keeps
you just
going.
keep rolling. Yeah, you're just moving forward.
And even more, and even more so, this is improv as well, right?
Exactly. Yeah, yeah. Improv. Yes, it's very improvisational. Yeah, but again, it's more for the audience than you.
And like you were, and like you were saying, you might have, you know, one or two things that you start this game, and then kind of, in a way, hand the ball off to them, and it becomes, and like you said, it becomes their game, and you're just playing their game at that
exactly.
point. And then what, I guess toward the end, you eventually kind of like take the ball back, or you just let them finish.
A little bit of both. Sometimes time runs out.
Okay.
Sometimes straight up time runs out because you're limited time with the prison. If you're by usually what it is, it's like an ensemble. Like there's an ensemble wrap up. At least with the prisons, usually it'll be like a close of maybe. I mean, I think with most things like the hospitals and prison, actually with every location, there's a climb up with energy, and then let's all decrease the energy down before we leave, so that there's not a like everyone's going crazy. So sometimes it's like a group song, or we'll let everyone will participate, and then maybe like a goodbye song, or like slow dance or something like that to exit out of those kinds of situations. Yeah. But yeah, the hardest thing are the clowns. That's the hardest thing. Come back, herd the clowns back. They just like they want to. It's really hard to.
Well, especially in a prison, right?
Yeah, because they just go. And there's so many games to play. Sure.
And you can't get too crazy there. I'm only intrigued because in the Army National Guard, I'm an MP in corrections for the Army.
Oh, cool.
And so I do. And so like I said, Army National Guard. So that's like 1 week in a month, 2 weeks in the summer. But you know, from 2014 to 2015, we were in Kuwait. We were running a jail, and you know there were situations where, you know, as the cadre, we're called cadre, and our inmates were other U.S. military inmates. So you know we're lucky. They're already military. There's already an element of discipline, military bearing, things of that nature. But it's like you as this performer, and you know, just like me as a cadre, you have to be well aware that there's so many things outside of this bubble they have no control over. They might get that one phone call a week, and they're getting nothing but bad news. And so us as cadre, that breakfast, lunch, and dinner is probably the highlight of their days. That hour and a half of rec time, TV time, gym time is the highlight. There's like 6 highlights of the day, and then that's it. And so back to, like, I can only imagine, plus me being a performer and a filmmaker and artist, I can only imagine, because you know, okay, so going back to comedians, so I have a colleague of mine who's a comedian, and he did a couple open mics, and he would, you know, try to get into his head. So, oh, I need some drinks to loosen up, man. My set, I'm telling you, my set's going to be so funny. And like you said, the second someone doesn't laugh at that first joke, you're like, shit, everything's out the window.
Yeah.
I'm going to botch it. I'm going to botch it. And so for me, you know, I'm not a comedian, but, you know, I might, you know, if I'm doing this podcast, it's kind of like a live thing. And I kind of have like these ideas and I have these points, but that's it. I don't get inside my head. I'm just going to rap with somebody. I'm going to rap with you. I might rap with you way differently than I rapped with the guest I had on previously.
Sure.
And it's just going to be me, you know, shooting the shit. And so as a comedian, you know what your jokes are, but comedians are storytellers. The best comedians are on a stage with a mic. But when they start telling their story, I'm watching a movie inside my brain.
Yeah.
Even though this guy is just on stage, it's a Netflix special. He might have somewhat of a set piece, set design behind him, some sort of maybe staging or whatever, props and stuff, maybe. But when he starts telling his story, I'm disappearing to, like, you know, freaking Brooklyn, 1980s Brooklyn, New York, a Jewish family having at it, or, you know, an Irish family in Boston screaming at each other. And I can metamorph into this idea, this story. And so that's all comedians are. And so for you doing you're creating this moment, this universe, and just let it kind of naturally happen. But like you were saying, yeah, it's just like if you get into your own head, and you get locked into like this one thing has to work. It's not.
Yeah.
But if you just let it happen. So here's the trick. So my same buddy did a Instagram live comedy set, just him and a mic.
Oh, cool. That's great.
And I'd say killed 50% of the time. Half of his punchlines got pops on Instagram.
Oh yeah, the bubbles that come up.
And
Yeah.
you know, and so then he can go back to that and he can start looking at things and seeing like what worked and what didn't. But he wasn't in front of an audience, and it might be. And so, you know, we'll address this later on. Is how like the situation is kind of changing things.
Yeah. Oh, of course.
But he wasn't in his head. He wasn't sitting there listening to laughs or no laughs. He was just telling his jokes the way he wanted to tell them, and they actually came out funny. And it's like, work with that material, but now, always 10 years from now, you're a big comedian. Always remember, there is no audience. Just tell your story to like me and your other buddy.
Yeah.
And that's who your audience is. You know, like these tricks. Imagine the crowd's naked, or imagine there is no audience, or turn on bright lights. You know, there's comedians that turn on really, really bright lights.
Oh,
blind them.
Yeah.
And who was that? It was either Mitch Hedberg.
I love Mitch.
Or somebody else. Just they wore sunglasses on stage the whole time, so they can't see nobody out there.
Mitch did.
Mitch
he wore sunglasses. Yeah, he wore sunglasses.
Because, and they were really dark sunglasses. See the crowd. So he's just up there, just telling the story to maybe his mom or his brother or his homie.
Yeah.
And he's getting he's getting pops left and right. So.
Well, it's great that you brought that up, because that's awesome. Because I have, with everything, I haven't necessarily checked in on all the different ways people are adapting, but I've kind of checked into some and talked to other artists in different arenas. But the thing about you bring up with the comedian is comedians are on stage, but they're not the only ones who are telling a story. The audience is always telling a story at the same time. Like they're always a part of the performance, not just to the comedian, but for every other audience member there. So if you're sitting in the audience, the whole audience as an entity is also affecting your story. So that the story of the comedian, and that's something I've been wanting to play with for sure, is the fact that audiences are like, when you go to a theater and you go see a performance, your experience, it's a dialogue. It's a dialogue between the stage, what's on the stage's story, and the audience at all times. The night and the story is going to play differently. In film, you can isolate and give it to the editor after the shots have been decided, and the editor is going to fit that together into that storyline. And the audience just kind of has to interpret, but they're no longer a dialogue, they're just viewing and consuming. And it's interesting you bring up the comedian on IG, is because just like we have some of these online, the fact that you can see those bubbles go up and get that dialogue again happening, which is interesting. I would personally like to have it where the audience is present while it's going on. So it's live, and their feedback and their breath is again experienced by the performer, even though they're in different spaces, you know, like to hear that.
So like a big zoom window of the comedian, and then like little windows of watchers around it, maybe. Yeah.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
Right.
I think what I love about doing something like that is not only is everybody aware of each other and you can see them and you can ignore them, but then they are also just like, it's not like they're in the dark as an audience member. Like you have to also realize that you're known and contributing, and people are going to be pissed at you as well.
Yeah. I'm offended. I'm offended. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yep.
It's exciting though. I think a lot of this stuff is really, I was already starting to try to put something together and figure out a couple things, and then this happened and I was like, oh, this is kind of like the perfect, I've got this screenplay that I've been working on, or series rather, and the character is in isolation, but not like, there's no like apocalypse, there's no loss of job or anything. And I was like, why does this doesn't make any sense at all? Like I kept trying to come up, like the story itself, I just was like, how did she get here though? Why is she here? Like, why is this location? And I was doing it purely for like ease, filming purposes. But now with this, I'm like, I've got a perfect reason for her to be isolated. She's like, she can be out there for sure. But it's cool. There's a lot more creativity. People, like all these great filmmakers, are no longer, I think, trapped by the pressures of expectation and budget. So a lot of the things that they're interested in doing, and audiences are just so much more tolerant and okay with things not being slick and smooth and shiny. Like they're interested in these different like ways of shooting things and ways of presenting things. And I don't know, it's cool to see people that normally are like, I'm making these films, this is great, I'm getting paid a lot, but it's not what I was hoping to create. And now there's like the creating happening a lot more. I feel like, for sure, just talking to people, like you were saying about that comedian doing it, like he was able to tell his jokes the way he wanted to tell them. That's so cool.
Right. And you know, that guy and another guy, you know, we're kind of a trio, you know, partners in our acting, filmmaking, music production, branding. We kind of, the three of us work together. And you know, one's a music producer and like a marketing manager, branding, social media promoter. The second guy, the comedian, is also an actor and a music producer, and then myself, a filmmaker and actor. And so we work, you know, we're devising a number of different independent projects. And like maybe even a year ago, I came up with 2 shows, a DC comic show and a Marvel comic show, but produced in such a way like the ID crime shows that we've done. So, so you know, if Bruce Wayne went home, had a cocktail, and watched ID, those crime shows be about Joker, Riddler, Penguin, whoever. we chose more obscure characters for more of like a fanboy thing. Everyone's done the Joker, so we're doing something different, and people are like, wow, never heard of that guy. But it's shot, 3 talking heads against a green screen, like the criminologist, the psychologist, the detectives or whatever, and then there's the archive footage, which is really the comic book panels, forensic sketches, which are the comic book panels. Archive photos might be, stills from sets, dramatic reenactments, which I shot at Comic-Con, shooting, filming cosplayers.
Cool.
As my dramatic reenactments. Splice it together, got a voiceover artist as well. And it's just like those crime shows, those ID crime shows. And, we would bicker back and forth. Well, why don't we, find some angel investors and do this real? And I'm like, this is the vision.
Yeah.
This is the hack. I figured out a way to do an entire series for what, $500 budget, $1,000 budget. By you guys, they come over, they do some of the talking heads. I did the talking heads. I did all the editing. Go to some Comic Cons. Probably spent another $500 throughout all these Comic Cons over the past year, filming different. And then it was just a hack. Now this was done years ago, and so it's now the colleagues are like, well, yeah, that's what we got to do now. Is what you were doing with that. And we found other hacks. There's a short film that I'm doing it in kind of like a motion comic way. It's not a comic book story, but I'm doing it in a motion comic way. So I'm finding some stock photos. I'm taking some other photos on my own, taking my own photos, finding some other stock photos, and kind of doing a motion comic to tell the story that could have been, I don't know, $100,000 short, but I'm going to do it for like $50 as a motion comic. And it's like these different hacks that, and I'm not trying to be like, oh man, I thought of that years ago, but there was these things that I was trying to like do and pull off, and now it's the only way to do it right now.
Exactly.
And so live IG DJ sessions, the same guy that did the comedy show is going to be doing live DJ sets on Twitch, Facebook Live, YouTube, IG, all these different things lined up. And I'm able to direct and produce remotely through Zoom with other software, and then send that out, and so on and so forth, and yada, yada, yada. And, we're just finding ways we're finding workarounds. We're finding production hacks and workarounds.
Exactly.
But that idea, a comedy show with all the attendees, I don't know, figure out a way to like have him on a big screen and then everybody watching kind of like in a gallery or something. That would be unique. But we'll try to figure that one out. But so how generally, I mean you kind of touched upon it quite a bit, but how have you been affected professionally by the quarantine?
Let's see. I think positively, I was out in the field more right beforehand. So I was gathering documentaries love. So a lot of no money comes in from that, just a lot of effort and passion and drives, but a lot of filming for that. And then a lot of just being on set. And then suddenly when this happened, so I wasn't putting as much time into personal projects and like creative projects. So it, it made me have to hit the ground running in areas that I hadn't been messing with for a while. So I wasn't doing as much audio voiceover because I was just like, gotta be on set as much as possible. I gotta do this documentary. And we go in whatever direction that we think needs to be focused on at that time. And I had a lot of acting stuff I was doing. So I was already felt kind of stretched. So I was only doing like one audiobook a month. So very little.
Oh, wow.
And then so I switched it up and was like, okay, get really jump back in, try to contact any of my previous clients, and then, you know, uh, just start recording as much as possible. And so I had to change up. I mean, I already had an audio setup, home studio, but I didn't have, for instance, like Source Connect yet.
Mm-hmm.
It'd been something I'd put off for years, because I usually go into the studio to record. Like when I do voiceover stuff, I usually go into the studio. So I was still doing that too, actually. But suddenly I couldn't go into a studio. So the stuff that usually pays more and usually has more variety in voice play, which I really love doing, like characters. So that was suddenly like, oh, what do I do about this? Oh, I guess I need to get and learn more about the software, learn more about being able to do like ADR over in my little tiny dark space, and listen to somebody. Like I'm on this podcast in LA, and it's funny. I've dealt with, like, in the studio you have the engineer tap you into the many clients, and I've had as many as like 12 clients giving me feedback as I'm recording before. But it's so much different when you're like in your home, in like your dark space, that like I'm used to just recording for clients and sending out and just kind of being like, there's something about it was a transition for me to open up. It felt like opening up my home to them suddenly. And also just the learning curve of using something new that you hadn't used before, and making sure that my volume level on my headphones to get them into me to hear their input was better. And then just using different, like I've previously, for audio, I used to use Pro Tools back when I had that, but I don't have that anymore. So then for most audio I use like Audacity or like Twisted Wave, and now I'm using Logic Pro, which is it's so different in its system, but it's so much better for clients who do film. So it's just it's a learning curve. And also just like the things that I've put off, like learning color correction, are now in my vision of things to spend time doing that I
that's
need
probably
to do.
like a big remote job right now. And I've held off learning Premiere for the longest. And
Premiere, yeah.
And like I'm still using Final Cut, Final Cut X, which is like iMovie. And I'm pretty good with it, but everybody's doing Premiere. And for years, I think 2 or 3 years, it's been on my agenda, learn Premiere, because that's what everyone's going to, and I still haven't gotten around to it because there's still other things. Final Cut just works. I'm stuck in Final Cut, but I couldn't agree with you more. It's like I gotta, I was lucky a while ago. Like I said, I set up, the green screen. There's a green screen behind here. There's also a white screen for self-submits, and then there's this set for the podcast. And I easily, fold this or slide that. And then the green screen and the white screen are on curtains, and so I set all that up. So it's like green screen for this or white screen for that or whatever.
Sure.
And then there's a simple mic setup and stuff like that. And I put foam in these walls and so, but there's always these tiny little tweaks to make things better. And
Definitely.
then come to find out this audio is fine. Like, could I just record a voiceover with this headset? Because this audio is kind of all right, but probably not. And, you gotta like,
you gotta know what your client's going for, who your client is,
exactly.
Like, that's all. That I was talking to somebody who's about to do a podcast, and I was like, for podcasts, the mics you have are fine. Don't go spend a bunch of money. I mean, usually people's problem is they get into something and they buy, and this, it's like you shoot, if you get a mic that's better than the space,
right,
then don't do that. Get a mic that's equal to your space, because that mic is going to pick up
Everything.
everything.
Mm-hmm.
Everything. I think that's usually, it's just like, yeah, it's like watching one of those films where they just put no effort into the audio and you're like, oh, I
Yeah.
don't know how much longer I can watch this.
Yep.
It's just yeah, for sure. Oh man.
Yeah, I've done a couple of installs and setups for some podcasts, and like money was dumped into these studios.
Mm-hmm.
Howard Stern level set, and nothing from it. And I got a laptop, I got a gaming headset, and
Mm-hmm.
a $50 webcam.
Yeah.
And it's about simplicity. Like,
Yeah.
I can't have this big mic in front of my face and all these
Yeah.
and then a mixing board.
Mm-hmm.
It's just, plug and play. But
Yeah.
but nowadays, a podcast on this production level, webcam, laptop cam, iPhone cam, webcam and gaming headset, it's acceptable right now.
Yeah.
Because people are suspending their disbelief and suspending their big expectations.
Mm-hmm.
They still want the content. They still want to learn and hear from people and discover new things. But it's like quarantine style,
Mm-hmm.
shut-in style, social distance style. So
Mm-hmm.
it's more acceptable now. And say you get some traction, say you get some following, say you make a few extra bucks, that can be put into a bigger thing later. And when the floodgates open, and we can get into this later, but the floodgates open, and then it's like all the effort we put in to more
Mm-hmm.
of creating, not so much investing, but
Mm-hmm.
just the honest content and the honest
Yeah.
creativity can then get turned into more budgeted, more better produced
Mm-hmm.
of that content. And
Oh yeah.
yeah, you're absolutely right.
Yeah. I think exactly like the fact that you bring that up is another way in this, like, being kind of awesome. Like all the projects that uh I've had in my head of doing, it's not that I have more time. I'm going to be very clear. I've been very busy and I'm like, trying to make a hustle all the time, but I suddenly have this kind of, well, there's no commute, so I guess I do have a little more time than I used to. But just the willingness to go, oh, you know what? I used to like to put together projects that were personal, like you talking about the your group. Like I'm part of a couple sketch writing groups and sketch teams, and everyone's been weary about doing filmed versions of it, and I'm always like, we gotta film this stuff, guys. We gotta do it so it's on film. And I was like, but now everyone's like, oh yeah, let's film it. So finally they're on board, kind of like you were talking about. This is what we're doing, and they're like, well, I guess it's acceptable now.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing with those things is it's creating more trust by creators of their audiences, which creates better content.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Bad content is stuff that doesn't trust the audience and the audience's imagination. There's too many lines explaining exactly what they were thinking when they already showed you what they were thinking.
Mm-hmm.
It's just like it's so exciting that, like, I personally feel like as we transition out, it's going to also transition those that might invest lots of money in things and be a lot more weary of going out of a formula, to be like, oh, wait a minute. People, audiences like having to think and like having to use their imaginations, even if they're seeing and having all these sensories affect them, they're still enjoy using their imagination. Like that kind of trust in the audience, I think, is gonna come out of this for sure.
Yeah. So and exactly. So there's this horror trick or action film trick. The scene where a victim is going to get executed at gunpoint by the bad guy, right? But they cut to the bad guy's face. you see the flash of the gun go off, but the glint of the light on the bad guy's face, maybe a little bit of blood splatter. Instead of doing all this CGI or this big head blowing up and this big gun going off, it's a close up of the bad guy's face, right? And and the gun's off down here. You see a flash of the gun muzzle and some blood splatter. That costs $5. Doing this big practical head blowing up or CGI for thousands of dollars of CGI, hundreds of thousands of dollars of CGI, you know. And so that's that old indie film, low budget film, you know, horror trick, action trick, whatever. And so there's always that, you know, workaround. That's a production hack. And so people are progressing, continually progressing on these production hacks of what's a workaround, you know, of you know, well, can't really shoot a guy on camera. We have no money for, like, you know, a prosthetic head or this big dummy head or whatever. And so there's that simple trick, you know, it's this long, the guy's begging for his life and there's all this tension, and then they cut to the guy's face. And that even adds more drama to the scene.
Definitely.
When you cut to the guy's face and he has no emotion, you're like, this guy is a sick son of a bitch. There's no emotion, a little bit of blood splatter on his face, the flash of the muzzle, and then, like, that's what this guy does. This guy's a dangerous dude. And that adds even more. Instead, if it was a wide and you saw the guy's head blow up, I mean, that's gross and that's violent and that's intense and shocking, but it doesn't add character. It doesn't add character to the character, I guess.
Yeah. It's like an instantaneous versus something that lingers with the audience. Like if you go to the close-up, you're going to be thinking about that person's psychology and you're going to think about how they affect you. Whereas if you see a blow up, it like happens, but then it's gone.
Right.
Whereas like, you're right. Yeah. The character carries.
And this is way more powerful and it's cheaper budget wise. So
100%.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, Halloween is a really good example of not having to be all gory and being terrifying. You know, that the whole thing is like a big workaround.
Yeah, you see two big, huge differences between Halloween 1979 and Halloween 2 1981, where the whole hospital, it was just gore fest, blood, throat slit, you know, knives in the eyes, fires, explosions. But the first one's terrifying. It's just shadows. Yeah. He was called the Figure. Michael Myers was known as the Figure, and that's what they ran with. I think it was the Figure or the Shadow. I think it was the Figure.
I think you're right, the Figure.
Yeah, and it was just a babysitter in a dark room looking around, and it's like those slow shots. What's that? What's that other movie? The Following, where these demons would follow this girl, and someone would have to have sex to pass it off to the next person. It was really an allegory for STDs. But within the movie, there's just this thing. There's just this person following them. I think It Follows. It Follows. Is what it's called. Okay. And it's frightening, man, because you got like a girl and a boy walking this way, but in between them, far behind them, you see just somebody walking, following them. And the person following them is blurry, scary as shit, no CGI, no blood and gore, and character development, and then and universe building, and what this thing is and why it's doing what it's doing. But then if you look deeper into it, it's really an allegory about STDs. But it is intense, and there is a couple of CGI things where like. There's something in the water you can't see, and you can see the water moving, so it's like an invisible deal. But yeah, it's just like these production hacks. Like, how do we make a scary movie and with $5? And you know, Halloween 1, It Follows.
We only have one costume.
Only one costume. Well, I got this.
Can't get it too dirty.
I got this William Shatner mask. Paint it white. Scary ass looking mask though.
Oh, that sounds terrifying.
Yeah. Blair
Did
Witch.
you do that for something? Oh, Blair. Oh, no. Blair Witch was so cheap.
No, Michael Myers' mask is a Star Trek William Shatner mask. Captain Kirk mask, and they spray painted it white.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't realize that.
Yeah.
Oh, that's so interesting.
So yeah, like in the 70s, they had like Spock
I didn't know
masks.
it was. Yeah. Wow. I didn't
And,
realize it was Shatner.
and so it was Shatner, and they spray painted it white, and that became frickin' Michael Myers mask. Yeah.
That's crazy. I didn't realize that's where the mask was from. That is scary.
And again, another little hack. They were like, well, they didn't come up with a hockey mask they came up with a hockey mask.
Mm-hmm.
That became iconic for Jason.
Oh, I know. Yeah.
A hockey mask. Well,
yeah.
It not a catcher's, not a baseball catcher's mask or a lacrosse mask, not a welder's mask. No, a hockey mask.
Mm-hmm.
And it's freaking frightening.
Terrifying.
Yeah. I mean, it's just these little production hacks. I mean, well.
Oh yeah.
In Friday the 13th Part 2, it was like a potato sack with holes punched into it. But in Part 3 is when he Part 3 he grabbed a hockey mask.
Yeah.
But that became the iconic mask.
Definitely iconic. Yeah.
And like a William Shatner mask painted white. Just a hockey mask. I mean, a lot of creativity in Nightmare on Elm Street. Now, Nightmare on Elm Street was bigger budgeted, but like knives on a glove. I mean, that's really freaky. But that might be a little bit more expensive to like sew that together, kind of design that. But
yeah,
still, I mean, it's like really thinking outside the box of coming up with like these bizarre things.
Mm-hmm.
But
100%. Yeah. It's cool. It's so cool. Yeah. Do you follow? Wait, there's cursing on your show? Do you have cuss words? Is there cussing on the show? Okay.
Yeah.
Do you follow Shitty Rigs at all? The IG for Shitty Rigs?
No, but I will.
Oh, it's so fun. It's just people figuring workarounds for like lack of tools in production.
Yeah.
It is one of the funnest things to watch. There's some just amazing uses of gaff tape. And then yesterday I saw something weird where they had it like in the roll itself to try to make some kind of swivel. And then there's some really great, clever ones that I've been like, oh shoot, I'm gonna use that one. That looks great.
Yeah.
But yeah, especially if you look up when they're like trying to shoot from a moving car and things like that. It's really, really fun.
Yeah, a good one to watch is the making of Extraction with Thor. Chris Hemsworth. Chris Hemsworth. They just came out with this movie Extraction, and the movie is famous for 2 really long single shot scenes, and it's like a 15-minute, 20-minute single shot. Really, it's a collection of different shots perfectly kind of melded together. But the director himself is on the hood of a car with a camera, shoulder rig camera on the hood of a car. And the car he's sitting on, high speed chase following the lead character's car. And then it stops, and this guy could have had his shins just smashed if something went wrong, but it didn't. So both cars stop. And someone's holding a strap on his back. So when the car stopped, the guy holding the strap lets go. He kind of like just with momentum gets off the hood, walks up to the lead's car, hands the camera off to somebody in the back seat of the lead's car, and then Chris Hemsworth turns around and he's like, oh shit. And it's like the craziest little way they came up to do like these slick single take scenes.
Oh wow.
But Shitty Rigs, yeah. I remember like 10 years, maybe 10 years ago or more. I was working on National Treasure 2, Book of Secrets when they were shooting in DC at the Library of Congress. And of course it's raining outside, but they want Video Village set up outside because it's an exterior shot. Okay. So they had, 4 of these pop-up tents, but they were missing these binders to bind these pop-up tents to one big pop-up tent. So of course, gaff tape, all the legs that were connecting the 4 pop-ups. And then So there's these little seams, right? So rain's still coming in like across, because it's 4 pop-ups to make a square, but really it's a cross in the middle with a seams. So we just put like cones, like no one can sit here. Rain's gonna drip here. So a cone here, a cone here, a cone there, and then we set up the chairs. Just, you're gonna get rained on if you sit here, so don't sit here. And someone comes like, is this gaff tape? And I'm like, dude. And someone started giving us a rash of shit. Like, did you freaking gaff tape this shit together? And I'm like, bro, this has been here for 7 hours and it hasn't fucking moved. So shut up. All right. So shitty rigs, man. Shitty rigs.
You should check it out. It's so good. Oh,
absolutely.
man.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Do you have a shitty rig story?
I'm sure I do. I just can't think of one right. I feel like there's been probably a million of them, but I can't think of one right now. I was watching, I was just thinking of like watching, I was watching behind the scenes of like random films. I like to watch a lot of the behind the scenes for Chinese films, because the first set I ever worked on was with an all Chinese crew, except for the gaffers who came out from LA, and some of them, and the crew only spoke Chinese.
Wow, okay.
But the gaffers spoke some English. So I kind of just was like with the gaffers for most of the time, but the director was telling me a story through somebody else, because he was a pretty big director in China, and he shot a lot of like historic films, and he was talking about like the fact that like they shoot for on his sets, they just shoot for 24 hours. They just keep shooting, and people would just kind of like switch out and fall asleep on set.
Jesus.
Like crew and stuff, because our set was kind of like that. This first one was that because they were shooting in DC. But anyway, because of talking to him, I've started watching a lot of behind the scenes for Chinese films. And some of these ones, you'll watch these DPs just get like strapped to like cranes and stuff. Not like in regular regular thing, and they'll just be swinging up and back, and it's some of the wildest stuff I've watched these guys, because it's not, a couple of them aren't big budget necessarily, or they've just rigged something on this crane versus an actual like professional rig, and it's just kind of wild to watch them do it. But also have you watched any of the behind the scenes for Game of Thrones?
I haven't even seen Game of Thrones.
I haven't seen Game of Thrones either. I watch a lot of behind the scenes, but there's this one where
nevertheless, behind the scenes, I've never even seen the show.
Oh yeah, behind the scenes is the way to go. I haven't seen the show. Only behind the scenes. So the DPs, they're doing this war scene, and the guy's running, and there's an explosion and stuff. They've got the cameras on a dolly, and they're going, or the track, and the driver, he like jumps over a bush as he's rolling the dolly. It's so wild to watch. Just like oh god, there's some really good ones from Game of Thrones. There's another one from I think 1972, that war film, or 76, that war film that just came out I think last year. They're showing the explosion.
1917?
Yes. Holy cow.
Yeah.
Look at the behind the scenes they do that one shot.
I did see that one shot when he was running down the beach and everything was blowing up. The shells were following him. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I did see that one shot. Yep.
Yeah. Game of Thrones has this other one where they drop in through the ceiling, and the timing has to be there's just so much. That show must have just been special effects and stunts. Like watching the behind the scenes is just all this like specific, don't screw up your timing or else that person's just in the hospital for a week. Like there's just oh God, it's cool. And then they were showing like tossing dirt. One guy following the camera guy tossing dirt to do this.
Yeah.
You know?
Yep.
And it's a green buck pail and a green shovel. I was like, that's like so dumb, but at the same time, I wouldn't have thought of it.
He's in a green suit with a green pail, and he's throwing
just
dirt.
Throwing dirt.
Yep.
Throwing dirt.
Yeah.
Oh, so good. Oh, so good.
Yeah.
I was like, I can throw dirt here.
like back to battle scenes. I worked on this. I was an actor. I acted in this PBS docudrama about it's called The Sultan and the Saint.
Oh,
and
cool.
It's about a saint, some saint that went to Persia somewhere and talked to the Sultan, and it was during the Crusades, and he was trying, and this one saint was really trying to prevent a big battle, which ended up being a big crusade battle there, and he failed, I think, but but there was this big, because I think English were invading Persia and Persians were fighting back, and I forget what I can't remember the term now, but they eventually become Muslim. Oh, geez. Anyway, so I'm this king's guard. I'm like this king's sergeant guard, and then later on, there's this huge battle outside this palace, and basically the stunt guy had 10 fighting combos written out. It says, "You two come here. This is your combo." And our combo was, I would do an overhand slash with a sword, then a jab with a sword, both blocked, and my partner would block both. And then he would do the same exact move to me. I would block both. And then we would slam shields, turn 180 degrees. So now I'm on the opposite side. He's on this side. Same exact moves, slam shields, turn. Somebody else had like a 6-move combo, a different one. Somebody else had a 6-move combo, totally different. Up to 10 couples, so that's 20 actors. And it looked like complete and utter chaotic fighting.
Yeah.
But when you chop it down like that, and then you have these people do this thing, you have this people do this thing, and then we were bumping into them. And they're all plastic swords. They're all plastic swords and shields. We're bumping into them. So there might be that one little added, like, I might elbow this person off me. They might elbow me off of them. There's that added little extra chaos. But even all this is choreographed, it looks freaking chaotic. And, and it looked amazing in the film that came out. But it's just, finding and that is what production is. It's just a bunch of little different hacks to pull off a feel, because again, you have to rely on the audience's suspension of disbelief, and the audience now telling a story and really kind of like delving themselves into this story, and it starts with me just accepting what I'm watching is real. I have to accept what I watch is real. That's why my wife will never enjoy this stuff, because the first thing out of her mouth, I tell her what something's about, and she goes, "That could never happen." I'm like, "We're not watching it then." I'm not. Even though she's the biggest Game of Thrones fans in the world, I'm like, "Oh yeah, a woman gives birth to dragons," and she goes, "Well, that stuff really happened." I'm like, "No, it didn't." She's like, "Well, that medieval stuff happened." I'm like, "The medieval stuff happened, but there's no ice zombies and dragons." And she goes, "Yeah, well, that's just a fun part." And I'm like, "Okay, but you can't watch Marvel movies with me and Star Wars movies with me. Come on."
Oh my gosh.
So, and my favorite argument with Star Wars is, look, they tell you right here, it's based on a true story. It's in a galaxy a long time ago, in a galaxy far, far away. It happened millions of years ago in a distant galaxy. And eventually you find out how they came to Earth, and then they started the human population of Earth, but it happened a long time ago, far away. And she goes, "What?" And I'm like, I'm just pranking you, but you have to, like, you're not going to enjoy it if you're not willing to accept what you're watching is real. And so, like with Star Wars and with Game of Thrones, suspension of disbelief first. You as an audience member have to go in willingly. Okay, what I'm about to watch is real. Okay. And then hopefully it's up to the filmmakers to not have terrible acting, terrible sound, terrible CGI. If you have a shitty looking dragon, then I'm gonna be like, no, no, it's not real anymore. But if you find like these camera tricks to cut around the fake dragon, right? Like Jaws.
Oh, Jaws. Yeah.
Spielberg could not get that freaking shark to work, so he did it very Hitchcockian, and he found all the camera tricks and the music and blood in the water, blood surrounding the swimmer's legs, and that is what dragged you in. Holy shit, this is real. This is intense. Where's the shark? Oh, because what are you going to see during a shark attack? You're not going to be underwater and be able to see a shark in ocean water, but you might see the fin, and you always saw that fin coming, the shark fin coming.
Yeah.
And then finally, when you see that shark and that line, we're going to need a bigger boat. Like, holy shit. And then it's like all hell breaks loose because of the culminating ending. But you were dragged into that whole movie because it was about how, the government failed to clear the town, and the sheriff was freaking out, and it's all about the people screaming at each other, and then the parents of victims screaming at the sheriff, and then they go on this hunt, and they don't see it. They don't see it for hours. Then it's about these people getting drunk on the boat during their hunt, and then the last 10 minutes is like, boom, all hell breaks loose. Shit hits the fan, and there's the big ass shark, and blah 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 blah, and blow up the shark, and then the climactic battle. But again, back to like, production hacks and trying to make things work. But
definitely, always.
Yeah. So with that in mind, speaking of production hacks, how about some life hacks? How have you been affected by this personally?
I guess not. Again, I think from being a resourceful person and always on the go, I will say that I think I've connected more with people than I have in the past. Like I am on, so I think I have to say no more currently. It's like I'm having to say, oh, no, that's too much for me, a lot more than I was before, because it's like full access all the time, and everyone expects that. So and people, because not everyone has the luxury or good fortune to necessarily be working right now or have the opportunity to work right now. There's such an influx, and then some people are isolated by themselves. So there's definitely an influx of people wanting to connect. So for me anyway, as far as people go, it's like there's a lot more, hey, what's going on? How are you? Hey, do you want to go to this meeting? Or hey, do you want to do that? I mean, again, I would say that creativity is what's come to me the most. I'm part of this LA writers group that has made me just a lot more gentle and more seeking to fail at things, which is great, because I just want to succeed at things. So being more interested in failures, like, cleared up my writer's block, and I do tea studies. So like I got to participate because people are finding alternate work, all these workarounds, instead of going to the tea room in DC and just being with that small community. Instead, they did the same tea gathering, but worldwide. So it went for like 22 hours, and you could kind of check in, and it was different parts of the world doing the tamais. So it was it's cool to see how people are, like, linking up. I've got a lot of friends that are musicians that have been doing these living room shows. So kind of like connecting with them, and then people I haven't talked to in years and years, and different creative people just kind of like reaching out. So for me personally, I feel like as far as it's impacting me, it's been very freeing in some ways.
Right.
At the same time, though, there's also those that I also am finding myself being like, I'm still working. Part of me wishes I wasn't working just so that, like, some of you is like, I mean, I don't wish that, but I'm very thankful. But sometimes I'm feeling a little overwhelmed by the insinuation from some of my lovely friends to be like, shouldn't we be hanging out on the Zoom? And I'm like,
right.
I have a meeting.
Yeah.
I have a meeting to go to. Or the expectation, or some of the expectation from different works or creative groups that I'm a part of, with timelines being like, well, you should have plenty of time. You know, like, why can't you have it to me by tomorrow? And I'm like,
not that
no.
easy. I will, and you said before, we're cutting out the commute, so maybe we can get maybe 1.5 things done.
Yeah, but
so,
not.
So
not
you know,
everything.
we had this podcast scheduled, and never before did I think I'd be able to run upstairs, grab my baby, start tickling him, you know, and playing with him, change the shittiest diaper I've ever seen in the world, change his clothes, keep, you know, tickling them and playing with them and making them giggle, nuke some food, make a cup of coffee, eat that, and then be back on set in time to record an episode with you.
Yeah.
Before, it would be like, grab a Cliff Bar, jump in the car, probably be 5 minutes late to the freaking studio or something, right?
Oh yeah.
To the
Oh
set.
my God, we don't have our traffic
And
commute,
there is no traffic. Yeah, and there is no traffic. So if there is that thing to have to drive to, it's traffic right now.
Oh
Right.
my gosh.
Yep.
Oh, where you're like, I left 4 hours. Oh, I was on this one shoot, and I remember being like, I can't believe this. I'm really good friends with the entire crew, so good, and I'm always early. So it was like one of those times where I was like, well, I know he won't fire me, at least. But I was like, I swear, Brandon, I left where I would have 2 hours. I was going to be 2 hours early. And he was like, don't worry about it. And what I learned was that the traffic was so bad, everyone on crew was a half an hour late. So it was like one of those things where I was like,
is this Brandon with the Sirens and Storyhouse? And
no, this is with Sympatica Media in Simpatico in Baltimore. A Baltimore independent, yeah.
Yeah, I know them. Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
But there's been times, you know, I've been an AD and been late to set, and that's a bad look. And for starting off. And so when I joined the National Guard and got into the military and really got that kind of discipline, like, you know, knock stuff out ahead of time, make sure you know, put your clothes out the night before, and all these little life hacks, so that you're up and out, you know, load the car the night before, all these little simple things that you might not have known just as an adult or as a college grad. But the military really, like, puts a lot of muscle memory of these things that you never thought would help. And so still there's times, I say 10%, I'm calling up, you know, the AD or the AP or something, and I'm like, GPS is 15 minutes late, and they're like, don't worry about it. And I get there, and I'm still like one of the earlier people. I'm 15 minutes late.
Oh, it's so ridiculous. Yeah, and everyone's
the
like
DMV.
leaving early. Oh God, I know. Oh, we're just not made for it. Yeah, but I love that you mentioned that. Like, you can get so much done. Like this morning, I woke up. The first thing I did was I had to edit some. Oh, I shot like a self tape. Then I edited audio that I needed to turn in, and then I like went to a writer's meeting. Then I walked my dog. Then my brother's a photographer, and I'm quarantined with him, so yay. So he was doing a product photo shoot, and then I was like, hey, I have to shoot this drone scene, etc. And then I need a mid, like, running shot. So I went and shot that. I had a whole costume, this crazy costume on before I met with you. So we went and shot that, and then I came back. And then after this, I have something else to shoot, and then some more audio to edit. It is nice to be like all just right there, that you can like, it's like all in like grabbing distance.
Yeah.
Right now, which is I'm gonna miss.
Who knows what kind of productivity I would have if, you know, me and the wife brought the baby boy home February 20. Well, he was born February 29th, but yeah, we brought a baby boy home March 4th, and so, and so that's what our hands have been full with for this whole quarantine. But you know, who knows what I'd be pulling off if I was still a bachelor at my old place, you know, but
oh sure,
but I'm still knocking out a lot of stuff and hands-on with this kid, you know, and
yeah.
But the beauty of it, and I've mentioned this probably every single episode I talk about him and my wife, but you know, me and her have been lucky enough to see every little micro advancement of this kid. You know, a lot of people, you know, for the last 40 years, it's been like, did you see the first walk? Did you hear the first word? What did he say? Mommy, daddy? And we're seeing him going from smiling to like, kind of like sort of laughing to like full giggles.
Yeah.
To like kind of having reactionary verbal responses, not words, but you know, we say something to him and he goes, ah, aha, or something like that. And that's actually like a word to him right now. And we're seeing every little micro advancement and growth as opposed to just, and not to knock the old generations and the old normal, but it's not just going to be the first step or the first word, but it's like, he's trying to touch our face, but it's really like he's like backhanding us, but you can tell he's trying to like reach out and touch us, and he's like headbutting us, but really that's his way of like hugging us, you know, and like leaning his head on us, and we're realizing we're seeing the evolution of his neck growth, you know, his neck strength, you know, like he couldn't keep his head up, but now we can just pick him up and we don't have to cradle his head because he's holding his head up straight. And it's like these little micro advancements as they're happening, instead of like realizing, you know, by going to work every day, realizing, oh shit, the kid's 10 pounds heavier. We're watching every pound, you know? And you know, and for us, it is, I feel it's more impactful and more memorable because, you know, we're keeping a log. There's apps for that shit now.
Oh yeah,
modern technology. Quarantine wise,
you're not having to remember to write.
Right. Right.
Awesome.
So, yeah.
That's awesome.
I mean, it's and I'm still, but back to productivity. Yeah, I'm still finding a way to like knock this out on Mondays and knock this out on Tuesdays and stay productive.
Yeah.
Maybe not 6 shoots a day like you, but maybe one.
It's a juggling act. Whatever I am being creative when I can, for sure. But gosh, I'm sorry. I'm very congratulations. That's like amazing that you have a child so young, so right there. I'm so happy for you because I mean, I know when I was growing up, the first 3 years of my life and the first, I guess, 2 years or 4 years of my life and 2 years of my brother, we lived in the same building as my dad's office on the upstairs. And he's a chiropractor, and he had only one adjusting room, which had a swinging door, which swung into our kitchen. So my parents, those first years, had a similar thing that you're experiencing right now, where we were there like all the time. Even when my dad was at work, maybe we'd push the door open and interrupt, you know, those kinds of, and my parents talk, I don't have any children, but my parents always talked about just like how just incredible that opportunity was for them to have that.
Yeah.
That's so cool that you get that. That's so cool. That, oh my gosh, and so little. What is that, like a month old? 2 months?
He's 2 months, maybe 9 weeks, coming up on 10 weeks, maybe. Yeah.
That's incredible. Yeah. Congratulations.
So it's definitely, you know, something that's been keeping, you know, we get a little stressed out for different reasons, but we're not stressed out like cabin fever quarantine wise.
Yeah.
It's like
You've got an entertainer.
yeah, we do. Yeah. Speaking of which, we'll segue right into
Okay.
you know, another point is what have you been watching? Any movies, any series you've been binge watching? And
Oh yeah, that question was really hard, by the way. I would I have a hard time watching things without watching them critically or
sure.
for a learning purpose, as you probably have that sometimes or all
Yep.
the time. Um, I'm reading a book called Bird by Bird, which is really helpful for writers. Which, yeah, it's very easy read and nice. Haven't finished it yet. But as far as watching, I would say the two things that I've rewatched, I watched during and then rewatched, is a Korean film called Stranger, and then a Japanese two films. One's called Blue Indigo, the other one's called The Pornographer or The Novelist, depending on what the translation is. And you know, the Korean one, it's the way the acting's great, but it's the way it's shot that's so like, I like the lighting, the way they lit that. I've watched it like several times because I really enjoy the way they've lit it, and the story's fun. It's kind of like a series drama, you know, like suspenseful, corruption, all that kind of stuff. And then The Pornographer and Novelist, I keep watching, I probably have actually watched that 4 times, is they're very short episodes, but every episode could live by itself. Like, you wouldn't have to watch the next episode. You could just, and they're not like disjointed or like separate stories, but they're just, I personally think it's well written and edited where it really can stand alone. Each one has a very clear arc. Each one has a very just you can invest in the character immediately and walk away from it being like, oh, I just experienced this this journey in this scene. And I think all the actors do a really good job of, you can see them as tensegrities. You really can see the constant expand, contract on space and in themselves, and just the multi layers that I think the acting's really great. And it's very clear that they're multidimensional, and that both like history and struggle are constantly affecting the world and each character. And it's hard to find. I find it very difficult to find things that can be that are short, because I think that a lot of episodes are like 10, 13 minutes, something crazy like that, where it's a clean, isolated arc. And I think Aaron Sorkin does a really good job of having through lines through his like core wounds really carry through his work. And at least the Japanese film, I think, has a really nice, clear following every scene clearly. The actors did their homework, and I think the script also lends itself to those driving objectives throughout the whole film. Yeah, that's what I've watched. It took me a while because I've watched a lot since being quarantined. I try to watch something every day or read something every day, even if it's a little bit short, just to try to stimulate. Even really bad work is worth watching sometimes, to either see what not to do or to find some gems that work in it.
Yeah, for
sure. So I have been trying to do that.
Okay. Yeah. Blue Indigo, The Pornographer, aka The Novelist.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. It's a little racy. It's a little racy. It's not for I guess 18 and under. I don't know.
Okay. Sure,
I
sure, sure.
watch stuff I probably shouldn't have watched much younger than that, so I don't know.
Yeah. I'm a big nostalgia guy. So over Christmas break, my wife's favorite holiday movie. No, my wife's Jewish. However, she loves Elf.
Oh gosh, Elf is
So
actually
funny.
really funny when you revisit it again.
Oh yeah, it is funny.
Mm-hmm.
It's funny. And I was trying to find Scrooged. Couldn't
Oh
couldn't
gosh, I
find it.
love that film.
That is my favorite.
So
That's my
good.
top 3 favorite Christmas movies. You know, A Christmas Story is like, a classic. Home Alone's great, but Scrooge by far I think is
Scrooge, yeah.
my number
You
one
couldn't
Christmas
find it?
until freaking like 2 weeks ago on Tubi. It's on Tubi, but I guess I didn't start a Tubi account until just recently because Tubi, that's a whole nother story. I've talked about this on the show before. Tubi's got Full Moon Features channel and the 80.
Oh.
You remember Full Moon Features?
Yeah, I do.
Puppet Master,
I
Doll
used to
Man,
watch it. Yeah.
Prancers.
Mm-hmm.
Those are like my favorite films on I don't want to date you, and I'm clearly dating myself, but you remember like, Monster Theater and action cinema on channel 50 or channel 54 or like DC 20?
I
Like
don't remember stations.
uh-huh.
I remember some of those. I will also, it's really easy for me. A lot of stuff I either had to watch at somebody else's house.
Right. Mm-hmm.
My early days, we actually had a dial, antennas.
Yep.
And
That's
I
what
was
I'm
only
talking about.
allowed to watch PBS for a long time.
Yeah. So to the best of my memory, I think it was Saturdays. Now, if I didn't go somewhere with my dad and my brother Saturday morning and like afternoon, we would get home, whether we got home or I was home all day. It was WCW wrestling, like early, like low budge WCW wrestling. And then it was, I think noon was Kung Fu Theater, 2 p.m. was
I
Monster
watched Kung Fu.
Theater. Two was Monster Theater. 4 might have been Monster Theater Action, and then might have been like some of those early UPN shows like Xena or Point Man or something. And then it was always the 8 o'clock movie on Saturdays. So it was like a full day of movie watching on channel 20 or 50 or 54 or one of those channels, and yeah, I feel lucky that I was able to grow up with something like that. And now you got Pluto and you got Tubi that are doing their best to kind of mimic that.
Okay.
But like digitally, Netflix has their categories, but Tubi has like specific, very even more specific nostalgic, like, Monster Theater or, and it's like the Full Moon Features. But anyway,
that's cool.
But then I found Scrooge on Tubi, and so I think it was like earlier this week. I'm like, babe, we're gonna watch this, and she goes, "Isn't this that Christmas movie? It's not Christmas." I'm like, "No, we're gonna watch it anyway. We're gonna watch it. We're gonna make up for not having watched it on Christmas. And I'm gonna watch it. We're gonna watch it right now." And so we watched it, and
that's awesome.
But also, it was really fun to watch that, even though it wasn't Christmas. It's like people getting together, bonding, healing each other through connection and love and positivity. And I think that's what we're getting. Even though we can't touch, we still have to social distance or be connected to the internet. I think we're still finding that with each other because we want it so much more. We're reaching out. We're reaching out further, and we're reaching out more often because we want that, because we're lacking it, and we're finding all these apps and finding all these programs and finding all these methods of doing that. But Scrooged, it's such a great film.
It's funny. The effort. It's like when you live in a place, like when I've done this so many times. I live like 3 blocks from somebody, and I never see them. Then they move away, and I see them more than anyone else in the city. You know what I mean? Like, it's like that
Yep.
effort. I put the effort out even because it's too easy to go, well, they're right there. It's like going to see monuments or going to the museums. You know, it's like, well, it's always there. I'll just go and then it's like, they're shutting down. Oh, I'm going to go see it. It's like, we're trapped. I better reach out. I might not get a chance to reach out again. You know, yeah, you're right. There is more of that, like, really making effort now, for sure. I like that. I watched Scrooged over the holidays, and when you said you couldn't find it, I was like, where did I see it? Did I see it on Netflix? Did I see it on Amazon? What did I see? One of the many streaming sites? And I realized I must have seen it. It must have been on like in a hotel. Like I must have been on a job, and it must have been on the
TBS
hotel
or TNT or something like that, like one of those
I'm sure that's what it was on.
because
I was like, I just watched that.
Because during Christmas, I think, and I love Prime, but I think they were charging like
probably
$7 or $8 for it, and I was just like, yeah, we got other stuff to watch, so we just did that. But
that's awesome. I love that movie.
but you raised a good point about people leaving. You know, I had the members of my zombie squad, which is kind of like our creative clique. One moved to Colorado, and we got way more active through the internet. Like we got way more active remotely. And another one, another buddy of mine, we lived together and we did a few things when we lived together. And then he moved out and we kind of did a few things. And then he moved to Arlington and we started doing a few more things. And then he moved all the way out to Fredericksburg, Virginia, which is like halfway to Richmond. And we're doing way more remotely now. And it's kind of frustrating. Like, why weren't we doing all this, everything we're doing now? Why weren't we doing this when, we were roommates or when we all lived in Maryland? You know what I'm saying? And so it's kind of intriguing how, they say absence makes the heart grow fonder. Absence might get you concerned about losing out on that collaboration, and then the brain starts clicking more. So, dude, I got 3 more ideas now. I'll drive all the way out to Fredericksburg. It's only an hour away. Or you come all the way out here, spend the night, do a whole production weekend here, or do a whole production weekend there, or do all this, or do a podcast. We tried to do a podcast like this, and it didn't really work out. But now, in these times, it's starting to work out, and maybe get some more traction. So,
totally.
Absence makes the brain work faster. I don't know.
I like that. It's funny. I was trying to think of things too. I was like, absence makes motivation happen more. But I like the brain works faster. That's a really good way to put it.
Yeah,
I'm gonna start saying it.
It's like the fight. It's like the fight or flight.
Exactly.
Thing, it's like you're about to leave. Oh, all right. Oh shit, you're gonna leave in a week. What can we pull off in a week? And then it's like boom, 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 boom. Okay. Can you sacrifice a whole week before you leave? And we knock out 40 projects in 1 week, and then I'll give you half of them. You edited them when you get to your new spot. I'll edit the other half, and then it's just like flooding YouTube or social media or whatever with all this content. And it's like kind of
right.
fight or flight type of mentality. Well, what would you say is your next agenda for the next month or two?
Finish first draft of screenplay, one of the screenplays, get finish editing and color correcting a commercial for Tap Twice Tea, finish interviews for the documentary,
Full plate.
Those are going to take up a lot of time. And then probably the other thing I would like to do is like go outside and lay in the grass for 10 minutes at one point. Something like that where I'm just I got excited. Something like that is not project oriented would be just I used to play bike polo a lot to have a space to just do and not have to worry about it affecting my creativity, and just kind of like a freeing space, you know? So I feel like doing something active, or just spending time and not thinking about what I need to do, would be a good way to put it. Like, not being like, oh, well, I have that on this, not looking at a watch for that time period.
Hell yeah.
You know, that's what I want to, that's what I'd like to accomplish and be very successful at this. And I want to fail 5 times next month. Something.
Fail 5 times.
Fail at something 5 times.
Okay.
Or more. It's fine. But I think I've been enjoying having that objective has added so much, because it's like being a little kid when you're learning, you know, you fail at things and you get better at them because you're so willing to do it, you know, and you don't care.
Yeah.
And it's not the weight of the world on you. And there's a need for perfection and doing things correctly, which kind of gets drilled into you as you get older. And I think that for me anyway, especially like I'm trying to learn 4 languages right now too. So it's like this kind of thing where it's like, it stops you before you're even able to get going. And one of my screenplays has been that, which is why the writers group I'm part of is like really excellent, because it's not critiquing each other's work. It's kind of like a free flow real quick and then sharing with each other. But it just frees things up from me being like, I'm writing, and then the filmmaker in me is going, that's not going to work out. And then the actor in me is going, well, I actually think this. And those like separating those hats that are getting in the way of one of the tasks. The writing has to go free of that. And then the filmmaker can edit the writing later and ask for changes. But so failing, being like, I'm going to fail, is going to free up even more space and creativity possibility. I feel like just like shitty rigs, when you like put something together and it's just not going to work out, but might as well throw it on the wall. And if it slides off, great, you know?
Yeah. Who knows how the Steadicam was invented, but the guy who invented the Steadicam won an Oscar for the science and tech portion, you know? And who knows how he came up with it? Probably with a shitty rig. With a really shitty rig, and then kind of like unshittied that rig, and then came up with a freaking Steadicam.
Exactly.
And I love that idea of like, you know, attempting to fail at stuff, because you know there's that old alpha, that old outdated alpha male, and there's nothing wrong with alpha males.
Oh yeah.
There's nothing wrong with that alpha mentality, but this old phrase of I refuse to fail, I refuse to lose, and I think in today's age that has developed into I refuse to try because I don't want to fail.
Yeah.
But for me, I refuse to not try.
Yeah.
You know, because you're not going to succeed without failures. You're not going to succeed with trial and error. That's how the Wright brothers came up with the plane. That's how
100%.
That's how the inventor of the Steadicam invented the Steadicam. It was trial and error.
Yeah.
And it was fail to finally like, boom, I got the blueprint. So
yeah, totally.
Yeah. So what's one view or idea that you have for our new normal?
Our new normal? I think that our new normal is going to be a lot of I guess it's kind of a repeat. I feel like content is going to have a greater platform to go into, and I think not only do people, I mean, there's more. I think everybody's open-mindedness and new ways of thinking outside the box are going to carry over, such as collaborations, like you were saying, like across the country. Like I'm on this podcast in LA. He wouldn't have hired me as a voice actor for it because he kind of stays in his little circle in LA. if it weren't for this, right? So and because of kind of accommodating to the fact that people are isolated and kind of lowering the expectation of necessarily the production quality of some things, or even like maybe you don't have the nicest video, but you have video camera, but you have a great story. I think those things are allowing people to connect with people they never thought of connecting with. Right. I have a friend in London who she's been hosting these karaoke shows. And so you're participating and you're getting to connected with these other people through those that you didn't. I mean, I connected with this musician who I wouldn't have connected with through another person via this kind of atmosphere. And so the collaborating, I think people are more willing to look outside the box and outside of their small circles, and more willing to be like, oh, I'm going to give this unknown person a chance. And I also think that the content that's getting created and the different platforms that are starting to get used more are again going to just make everybody more trusting of audiences. And I think even studios may take more risks in the outcome of this. Yeah. And more might have to change their function. But I think that it's giving everybody, I think the waters, what is it? The water rises. If you do well, everyone else around you goes well. I can't remember what there's a saying like that. I feel like that's what's happening right now, is it's creating a Wild West. It's like that company wants this done. Well, now I can pitch myself to them. Whereas they might said, only if you did this and this. You go, well, I know how to do that. I just don't happen to have this one thing that they have on their list. So now I'm just going to pitch myself to them. And they're more willing to hear you, I think, right now. So I think in the end, people will just be more willing to collaborate, look outside the box, do workarounds. And I think there's going to be lots of new formats coming out of this of creation. I think film is going to I think film will change. I think it's not going to just stay the way we know it. I think just like with VR and just like with which VR is an amazing tool.
Yeah, I've talked quite a bit about the VR on this show, because
cool.
For years now, the VR games, the Oculus and things of that nature have been growing to where I do quick story. I do live streaming. That's another little thing I do. I was doing live streaming at conferences, conventions, hotels, concerts, convention centers, things of that nature, like Microsoft at the Washington Convention Center, or, those different conferences. And I was doing live streaming of those events. Well, now they're not having them in person. So they're doing Zoom things. And we found a workaround to doing Zoom.
Oh, cool.
But people, since VR came out, there's been a lot of talks of doing all these classes, just VR. Simple was a Google Glass. You put it on, you can see your classmate next to you in VR. Your teacher's going to be there in VR, and all the instructions in movie theaters and screenings. And so that's the next level of this live streaming thing, is VR live VR streaming. I couldn't agree with you more. Yeah, VR is definitely. And I don't mean to cut you off, but also you were saying people are reaching out backstage. Now I'm on backstage for acting and a little bit of crew. So backstage started an additional category, work from home. And so people that are casting are choosing work from home because they can take some voiceover. They know these voiceover actors, voiceover artists, whoever, aren't coming to the studio anymore. So there's this new work from home option. And so now Joes from Canada and LA and New York are going to be taking dudes like me from DC and Florida and Minnesota. So and it's an easy reach out now. So the second you click that box, work from home, it's like, wow, this guy's got a great sound, because they only wanted people in LA. So they check only LA. Well, now they check work from home, and I'm getting work from home notifications, and I submit my previous work. And they're like, whoa, this guy's got a great voice. maybe not me, but I'm still working
Yeah.
on my whole voiceover,
Yeah.
my whole voiceover deal. But
yeah.
yeah, it's
But
like,
that's it. That is it. That is well, I was at a casting conference 2 years ago in London, and a bunch of casting directors from all over the world were talking, and one of them, they were all talking about self-tapes, and self-tapes weren't something. I mean, self-tapes are common now.
mm-hmm.
They weren't before.
They were common, maybe they were pretty common maybe in the last 5 years.
Mm-hmm.
But
Exactly.
now, yep.
Now they're what happens. And I remember when Erica Arvold first moved to Charlottesville. I used to live in Charlottesville at one point, and she did, it was like, I don't remember, she had just gotten there, but she like did a little workshop, and she was showing her process of casting, and she's like, she dumps all the headshots on the table, and you're like mixing through headshots. And it's so funny because like 3 years later, that was like thumbnails. Suddenly you're not looking through headshots physically on a table, you're just scanning through tiny thumbnails.
Yep.
And now on your phone, you're watching the self-tapes on your phone, and
it's tags, like, Glenn Nelson, cop, army, law enforcement, military, tattoos, buzz cut, and it's tags.
Yeah, definitely tags. And I was talking to this one casting director from Italy, and she was talking about how crazy it was to do the first self-tape, from narrowed down to the director watching the first self-tape of one actor and the other actor on a split screen to try to decide if they had chemistry or not. If they were going to have chemistry or not, versus having them.
No, there's some outside the box shit. So watching two self-tapes that are pre-recorded playing side by side.
They were trying to figure out, versus old school where you bring the two people in and see if they've got the chemistry, but they were trying to do it that way. And
maybe some Zoom stuff nowadays, right?
Now Zoom would make more sense for that kind of thing.
Zoom,
for sure.
Or Skype or whatever people are using.
It's wild.
And I was going to say, well, I can't remember what I was going to say.
Yeah,
we'll get to that. But it's on the tip of my brain. I was going to say, what's the new normal? Never mind, I forgot it. It's gone forever. But that's what it was. So after a year from now, these producers and directors and writers are going to realize the profit margin to the expense margin has worked so well over the last year.
Exactly.
Well, in the coming year, but like 2020 to 2021, they're going to look at the profit margin now and realize just using Google Drive and Zoom and Dropbox and self-submits, paying the actor maybe twice as much, because that actor has to like do his own setup, do his or her own setup in their home studio, pay them twice as much, but no crafting, no catering, no location expense, no crew, minimal crew expense, minimal actor expense, and extras expense now, because so much is being done remotely. Their profit margin is like, well, shit, I'm just going to keep doing it this way.
Yeah, definitely,
for decades.
Oh yeah.
If not, kind of like assimilating into VR and the Unreal Engine and animation and strictly voiceover.
Yeah, and that money, that excess money from original budget can go into promoting and distribution. Yeah.
Exactly. And so maybe hiring two social media marketers or brand invigorators, as they're called now.
So many different nicknames now.
Yeah, but you double your staff on that, because because you don't need 25% of the old normal staff.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. So if you could close out with 1 point, what would that be?
1 point.
1 point, one bit of advice for our viewers. You want to close out with, one point, one idea.
One idea. Okay. Be compassionate with others and be compassionate with yourself, because if you do that, it'll bring you an abundance of creativity and productivity.
Absolutely. My DJ comedian buddy, I was testing out his studio. He was getting really frustrated, and I was getting really frustrated back. And I said, dude, stop. Build the thing. Take a break, take a minute to chill, and then go bring back all the equipment that you had last year. So he did. He took a break, chilled out. He plugged it in. Everything worked. And I just said, hold on, just stop. Because he was like, I don't know. I don't know how to. And I'm like, dude, you did. And then he's like, stop. Take a break. Take a break.
Yeah.
I'll leave it running. I went and took a break, bathroom break, came back. I waited for him to come back and say, hey, go grab that thing that you had. Just plug it in. Exactly the way we had it last year. So he did, and everything worked fine. So compassion, patience, maybe. And yeah. Couldn't agree 100%. With you more. Couldn't agree with you more. Well, do you have any plugs, links, socials you want to put out there?
I would say there's a fun Dojo Comedy Theater in DC has a streaming Dear Friends sketch you can find via them. I'm a part of those, as well as Random Bush Podcast, which is a sketch comedy podcast that you can visit. And then if you want to find out more about me and my weird little skits sometimes, my IG is Ali like the boxer, ALI, Cheff, CHEFF. And then in about a week, I'll be posting a little bit of more info about the ERA documentary on my website, which is alicheff.com.
Well, you heard it here, Ali, Cheff. It's almost been 2 hours. A lot of
whoa,
a lot of meat. Nothing boring in my eyes. So hopefully the viewers think so. And it was great having you on. I can't thank you enough for joining me and sharing everything. And you heard it from her. All her links in the description below. Click all her stuff. And thanks again, Ali. And to my viewers out there, like, subscribe, share, comment. Click all the links, thumbs up if you like it, and ring the bell for notifications. And check us out next time.